and she scared the shit out of me. So I was like, maybe I need to do this.
Feeling of fear pops up within you. That's a really good indicator of you probably should do it.
Can I just Mike does this joke sometimes, and sometimes he follows it up with the punchline of like, we
Just
don't
kidding.
have to.
The banter between these three is absolutely hilarious. They've been spending so much time together promoting challenges all over the world that now they've got to that point where they're just letting it all hang. More from Zendaya, Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist. The movie Challenges is finally out this weekend.
You were incredible today.
To have a fashion line, a foundation.
Just gonna turn a whole family into millionaires.
I love Triangle, Zendaya, Josh, Mike, what more do you want? And lots of tennis with a brilliant soundtrack. Right, the cast and crew sat down for a bit of a Q&A in LA ahead of the release and spoke all things about shooting this film. Take a look.
I couldn't define what kind of movie it was. Like, it was funny. It was so funny, but I wouldn't say it was a comedy. But there was drama, but I wouldn't say it was just a drama, and it had tennis, but it wasn't like a sports movie. So I think that feeling that it was kind of just like everything at once in this beautiful way was terrifying, but equally exhilarating and exciting.
The script was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The characters were amazing. The structure was so cinematic that I just immediately, instinctively felt that the company of Amy, the company of Zendaya, and the company of Justin, the artistic endeavor that we could all gather together in this would have been fantastic. And so I think I said I was in immediately, like...
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. Yeah.
Yes. And it was meetings. It was encounters with Justin, encounters, re-meeting at Zendaya. And I would say something that I don't like particularly movie sets, because I am a control freak and the chaos I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt this was a very kind of like playful. There was playfulness in making this movie that made me very happy about
Well, we hate each other.
Can I just Mike does this joke sometimes, and sometimes he follows it up with the punchline of like, we
Just
don't
kidding.
have to. Just kidding, we're great friends. But in the UK last week, we did an interview where he committed so much to this joke that it sounded like I bullied you. It was extraordinary. But I think today is going to give...
Josh genuinely in the middle of the interview was screaming at me, please tell them that you're joking.
Which one of us?
I believe I was still shooting Euphoria at the time. And it's one of those things where everybody knows that, like, especially when I'm working, it's really hard to like get me to do anything else other than focus on what I'm going to do tomorrow on set. And so we kind of had like a mock table read at my agent's house, and I just fell in love with the script. I mean, it was brilliant, and it also made me very nervous as something to tackle because of I think how complicated these characters are.
When Mike and Josh joined this team, this movie came to life in a whole other way, because
absolutely.
As complicated as the character is that Z plays, the character that the characters that they play are really exquisitely difficult roles, because they do unspeakably terrible things to each other, and you love them.
Luca and you were in Italy, I was in Ohio, we Zoomed, we met each other, we chatted, and then they flew me to London to meet with Z, and we did a screen test there. And I remember I left the screen test and I was walking around London, and I actually felt like it went atrociously wrong. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I did not book that at all. And then Luca gave me a call and he said, Mike, where are you? Come back, have lunch with me. So we sat down and had lunch. And he just was, we just chatted some more and got to know each other. But the thing that stuck out with me personally that was the draw to want to do this, besides the script and the team, was because it was always going to be art, is what they were asking me to kind of look at. And the thing that really stuck out with me about the character was this idea of a person, this craftsman who's fallen out of love with his craft. And he's so desperately trying to kind of get back to that place of purity, that place of, Josh uses the word flow, where you're just, it's like a form of transcendence when you're just in your work and just in your craft and you actually love the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us at times, we kind of ebb and flow throughout our artistic endeavors to always strive to try to find those projects that pull something out of us that makes us feel compelled to really conjure the things for ourselves.
We were lucky enough to kind of, I don't know, I call it summer camp. It was great because essentially we got about almost 6 weeks before we actually started production to just work on tennis. And we were under the support and guidance of Brad, who is incredible and an iconic person in his own right. And truthfully, I had no idea about tennis. I knew nothing. All I really knew of tennis was Venus and Serena. And so, again, it was one of those things that it was terrifying as a challenge to like take on, because you know you're supposed to be a great tennis player, and I've never been a great tennis player. And I think I was incredibly nervous showing up. And I think we were all incredibly nervous showing up on that first day. And so we did tennis training beside each other. We worked out beside each other. And we also had rehearsal beside each other, which was such a privilege to be able to have that time to work on the script, to get to know each other. But during that tennis training time, I think I was, driving myself crazy trying to, become a tennis player, right? Like I was trying to learn the fundamentals and make sure, like I remember when I first started hitting the ball, it just would go off into trees. Like it was just never even close to the court. And I was like, damn, I got a long way to go. And eventually, with tennis, if you're picking it up, it's not a game you can just pick up, right? You're like, unless you've been playing since 4, it's not happening for you. You know what I mean? So, I would come in and I feel like I would get it. I'm like, yeah, I got this. Okay. Like something clicked. And then you come in the next day and you can't do it and you can't recreate it. And you're like, damn, back to square one. And I think there's one thing too, is like, they're feeding me balls, right? I once asked, I said, I want to try to see what it feels like to return a serve. Someone hit me a real one. The way that thing flew by me so fast, and at the time I still had glasses. I've since had LASIK, so I couldn't even see the dang thing. So at some point I realized, okay, my approach has to be different, because this whatever this is isn't working. And as soon as the ball's flying at me, all of a sudden my fundamentals and all the form and everything is gone. I'm just trying to hit it or get out the way. And so we eventually, especially watching Luca, I think he was starting to build these scenes and choreograph them, because every shot in these tennis sequences was storyboarded, and it was so thought out and it was so meticulous. So I said, okay, well, maybe that's how I need to approach it too. Let me approach it like choreography. I'm a dancer, so let me dance this thing out, and I began to just focus on, we had amazing tennis doubles. And I just wanted to sync up with her, right? I wanted to understand her footwork, her patterns, her movements, and just try to make it as seamless as possible. I wanted to look like her mirror, and then I'd record myself next to her and I'd watch it back. I'm like, I could do that a little bit. Her arms a little more and her shoulders a little bit, and she's quicker on her feet, So that kind of became my entryway into looking like a tennis player, because I knew that at some point I wasn't going to be one, but I could fake it. So yeah, that kind of became eventually where we got, but the training was pretty intense, and it was great to do it beside them, because I know they were just as committed as well.
What made me say yes was Luca and Zendaya, and Mike wasn't on board at that point, but if Mike had been on board, that would have also contributed. I think also kind of fundamental. I remember having I knew Luca before. We'd met a few years before, and we talked about making some work together for a while. What I liked about Patrick initially, I mean, I love both the characters, and I actually read the script like a year or two before, because I met Justin in New York because my American agent, I just moved to New York, and I was on the phone to my agent one day and I said, I've got no friends. And so he set me up on a friend date.
We had a little date.
And I guess to kind of like guise it under the idea of like, this is also work, Josh. He gave me a script to read, but really it was just, Josh, here's a friend to make. So we met on Night Street.
I'll just embarrass you. Josh had also just won an Emmy at that point, and we were at this coffee shop, and people kept coming up to congratulate. So,
they're not real friends, Justin. Anyway, so I'd read the script before, but then when Luca asked me about doing it, Patrick was I thought this was beyond my reach, and I felt like this was a character that was so confident, so front-footed, so comfortable in himself, even though he has, as we all do, fears and insecurities, but really is, he's completely lives life to the full, and is very accepting of his flaws, and all those things seemed like a reach. And Luca very brilliantly kind of accepted that and made me feel comfortable around that. And there was a process, once we started preparing, where we had to kind of pull those things out. It didn't fit comfortably for me to not hide. He doesn't hide at all. So all those things contributed, but there was no doubt really. It's such an honor and a privilege to get to work with people like this.
6 weeks prior to actually shooting, by the time when we got to Boston, we had 6 weeks of training and rehearsal with Luca and Justin and Amy, and just getting to know each other. And then on top of that, Josh and I would just spend any other time that we had just running lines around Boston, just walking around, and we would just run lines. We'd go to the park, we would just walk around the city, and we would just run the lines. And by the time we actually got to those scenes, Josh and I also commuted every day together, so we spent so much time together, and then more or less we knew each other's lines like that, so we were able to kind of just come in and be like ba, 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 just like a tennis match, just be right on top of each other. And when you're as an actor, when you're given the opportunity to work with another amazing actor such as Josh, with such strong instincts and specific choices, Josh pings me something, and that gives me something to actually play with to throw him back. And I think we both understood these people pretty well. We understood the roles that we needed to play for each other, and it gave us the kind of freedom and the space to play and make choices. And Luca was really great in terms of feeding us ideas and directing us in the position that we needed to go. And I think between genuinely the three of us, we just very much knew instinctually what direction we all kind of wanted the story to go in.
The response might be just like the refreshing nature that it's a female character that doesn't have to be likable and doesn't care about you liking her, and doesn't ask for forgiveness. And I think that is probably refreshing maybe to some people. And I understand that. And that was refreshing to me when I read her. And that was why I wanted to play her, But I think, honestly, I say that before screening sometimes, because I feel like it's our natural instinct to judge people in general. So it's easy to judge these characters, and I understand that because we all do. And I think the beauty of this film is that your mind will change, because I know mine has. Every time I watch it, every time I read it, every time we were playing. I mean, honestly, I had preconceived notions about the characters, and then these guys came in, and with their performances alone, changed my perception of these characters, what they brought to them, how they, embodied them, the life they gave them. So I think it's one of those things that, it's ever changing, how I feel or my perception of the characters is ever changing. And so every time I watch it and I made the dang thing, I'm still surprised. And that every time I go, oh, well, this time I'm kind of feeling for this character now, or this time I'm team so-and-so. And this, so you're constantly living with them and learning something new about them. So I say that only because I know that you'll be wrong. Like, you're going to have an initial reaction and then you'll come back and you'll change it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it,
I have to say Zendaya does a brilliant job in this film. She's also a producer, and she's very convincing as Tashi, a character that I've never seen her play before, alongside Josh and Mike. There's loads of passion, lots of tennis. Oh, and by the way, side note, the soundtrack is pretty cool as well. It's out this Friday in UK cinemas. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be back soon. Make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on, because you know what? I don't want you to miss any videos.